Thank you so much for having me join this conference. It is a huge honor. Not only was Asma a friend of mine, she was a friend of Human Rights Watch, and she was a friend of South Asia. And she did all of this with a great sense of the ridiculous, which perhaps made our lives a little bit easier, because human rights work and working on civil society is often a depressing task. Uh, I just wanted to speak very briefly on the broader South Asia issues. Um, I just want to flag for many in your audience who perhaps are younger that we are largely a post-colonial society. And the reason that we have where we are at today is also because of civil society movements, but people across the current structures, which was previously colonial India, people who walked out, ordinary people who walked out and spoke. I also want to speak to the culture of South Asia, which is a very rich one of poets, of writers, of thinkers. We have, for a long time, enjoyed that kind of freedom, fought for it very hard. And the third thing that I want to flag is that as of now, complicated though they are, all of us are democracies in South Asia. And I just wanted to flag these things because these are things that have come after struggles, civil society movements. And in fact, many of the people that are in office today have used those same civil society freedoms to make their political argument to now win office. And it is important to put that in context as we speak to where we are at today, which is that a number of these leaders, once they have taken office, have somehow adopted a very feudal approach to their governance, where they have such dislike of dissenting voices and are crushing the same freedoms that they once enjoyed and benefited from. To go across South Asia, and many of us have already spoken about India and Pakistan, so I do want to grow more broadly. And one of the trends that we have seen in recent times is our political movements that are using religion, faith, majoritarianism to try and promote their political ideology. And it has had deadly impact. The biggest challenges that face South Asia today, and something that all these governments should be working together on, are the Eastern Front and the Western Front. 1 million Rohingya are refugees in Bangladesh. Afghanistan is in crisis. And yet, South Asia, which should be focusing on the rights of these people, are instead so often at odds with each other. In terms of the civil society structures today, I want to speak on two issues. One is public sentiment, which has often been fanned by political motives, but it does lead to two kinds of protest. It leads to protest of the offended, and the ones that are often claimed that their sort of faith or their ethnicity or something else has been challenged. They come out in streets in large numbers. You have seen that in Pakistan around blasphemy. We see it in India. We see it in Bangladesh. And this offended sentiment has led to deadly violence. Unfortunately, because it often feeds into the governing structures, that group of mob deadly violence has somehow been patronized by politicians. So while Akal earlier spoke about protests around the CAA or farmers' protests, or in Bangladesh, we have seen women come out in large numbers protesting against a terrible rape judgment where the judge actually blamed the victims. Those protests, civil society protests that speak to rights, are often not heard, are often curbed, are often criticized, are often told, it's often said that these protesters that speak to rights are defaming the country, defaming the government, bringing unrest. While there's another group of protesters who often feed into the sort of the government narrative, who are given an easy pass. So it's a more complicated space right now in how we address civil society freedom. What should be the right of everybody to have free speech, but why is one more privileged and another not? And that double standard is impacting civil society freedoms. The other thing that I quickly want to speak to is state policy. So while we are talking about our right to speak, there is also at the same time state policies that are coming in that are setting out to curb those voices. In Bangladesh, we have the Digital Security Act. In India, Akar spoke about the FCRA, the Foreign Contributions Act. In Pakistan, you have the PMDA. These are all laws that are being brought in somehow to try and curb dissenting voices. And I find that extraordinary also because in many of these places, these are governments that have been elected with large numbers. Why the lack of confidence? Why do you resist criticism? If you were really truly democratic, you would actually want these voices because it would eventually strengthen your governance, would make you popular with voters, and would eventually solve the problems that confront this region. And I know time is short, so I just want to end with some of the things where we, as civil society, need to draw attention to the fact that South Asia faces common challenges. And there are reasons why South Asia should be working together, not only to uphold civil society freedom, but to address these challenges. Poverty, inequity, lack of education, health. We've just come out of a pandemic, and each one of our societies have been exposed in the sort of terrible lack of proper health infrastructure. These are challenges that need to be addressed together. And lastly, I do want to once again flag that we have two big challenges. We have the Rohingya and we have Afghanistan. And, to try and frame this in the way of Hindu chauvinism or Sinhala chauvinism, which is what we're seeing playing out in Sri Lanka, or any other kind of religious identity politics, is going to harm people who are at risk. Thank you so much.